Good morning and welcome to another Writer's Morning Commute. It's a bit later in the day than usual. It's Halloween as I'm filming this, and I took off today and tomorrow from work, so we'll get some nice daytime footage rather than my normal dark mornings. And this last weekend, Stranger Things Season 2 came out. So I thought I would discuss that. This video is going to be a little bit chopped up because I'm going to be filming it while I run around and do different things. But I hope we can learn some things together about the show and things it did well and what we can learn from it. So I was overall very happy with this season. I thought the acting was some of the best acting I've seen all year, especially the kids. Like, it just amazes me how these young actors and actresses are just knocking it out of the ballpark. Let's see. Doing absolutely fantastic. The dialogue was all written really well. Very little to complain about. There was one episode that I thought was pretty weak. I did not enjoy. It was episode 7, which is very different than the rest of the series, and if you have seen it, you will know which one it is I'm talking about. Sorry. I was also, we'll have spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen it yet, beware. I was also unhappy with how they broke up Nancy and Jonathan, the way that they did that. I thought that how they handled, Nancy and Steve, and put together Nancy and Jonathan. I thought how they handled that love triangle last season was a great inversion of the expectation, and it was really upsetting to me. I mean, not upsetting, but kind of a bummer to me to have them break apart what I thought was one of the better parts of the first season, and that they didn't give the creepy social outcast guy the girl just because he was kind of sweet, you know? Like, it didn't really make sense for Nancy and Jonathan to get together, in my opinion. But with those two very small things out of the way, I'm going to pause here and go do something else, and I'll come back and start discussing the things I liked. Beyond the writing and acting itself, Stranger Things 2 also had a lot of other things that were really great about it. One of the bigger things that I thought was cool was the way my wife and I weren't sure what was going to end up being the monster, I guess you could say. For a long time, they did a pretty good job of setting up, is Elle going to turn evil? Is Will going to be monstrous in some way? Is Dart going to be a monster or just a cute animal sidekick? Joyce's boyfriend, played by Sam, he seemed almost too nice at first, and I know at one point I got the idea that maybe he was going to be a villain in some way. The doctor at the research facility, like, it just had so many people whose alignment you weren't sure what it was going to be, and that really helped to hold my attention throughout the season. So that's something for writers to consider, is how can you, while you're building your characters, give them good backstories, good motivations, know what they want and what they're willing to do for it. But at the same time, while you're actually writing, how can you hold that back while still making your readers interested? How can you make the readers ask those questions and build up those mysteries for your reader? Another thing I liked was how there were some good callbacks to the first season. All of Nancy's plot was revolving around the injustice that Barb suffered in the first season. So when you're looking at writing a sequel, it's always a good idea to go back and see what sort of loose ends maybe you didn't intend to leave, or that you kind of tied up a little bit. And maybe while you're writing your first book, you can say, okay, I want this to be developed more later, but for now, I'm going to tie it up a little bit in a loose knot so that if I don't get a sequel, or I don't get around to writing the sequel, it's still complete by itself. But when I do get around to finishing the sequel, hopefully, I can easily just tug loosely on that loose knot, and bam, I have that plot thread again. And it doesn't take much effort to bring it back into the next season. Alright, last thing I want to talk about that I think Stranger Things 2 did really well is once again in regard to it being a sequel. The first season, we had a lot of people who were hesitant to believe the supernatural. You had Hopper being a straight man in the adult world. You had Lucas being more of a straight man for the kids. And obviously throughout that season, all of them were exposed to the supernatural. None of them could deny what happened. So going into the second season, not only did they have a few plot points that were kind of possibly questionable, they did have a lot of people complaining that the show felt derivative rather than inspired by or making an homage to 80s culture or 80s movies, that it was just copying them. And all of that, and their need to have a new straight character who didn't know what was going on and who would question the more ridiculous things to hang a lampshade on them to make us believe the situation more as watchers. And they, of course, did that very well with Max. I felt like she was a wonderful addition to the cast. She had a different voice than the other characters, being kind of sporty, being less of a nerd, but still being the same age as the younger kids, as opposed to Nancy's age. So she did a really good job of bringing something new to the show while still enhancing everyone else, letting other people shine more while still adding something substantial of her own. And I think that really comes down to, as I said, her different voice, how different she felt. We had some familial drama in season 1. Mike and Nancy had some arguments, brother-sister arguments, but they really ramped that up to the next level with Max and her brother, which was really a different kind of drama than we had seen from season 1. Like, Mike and Nancy's stuff was there, but it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was never really a super focus. It was just kind of normal sibling issues. Whereas this, they really gave us a fresh new feel in the drama because it was a new conflict. We also got to see Bob, I believe was his name, Joyce's boyfriend, was similarly another kind of new flavor, sort of. He was an adult who was more of a nerd, so he fit in well with what was going on overall in the story, you know, he had all that technology knowledge, and he could kind of keep up with the kids and believed in the supernatural faster because of his background. But at the same time, he was still this like overly positive person who we didn't really see a lot of in season 1. So by introducing new characters who could fill in those holes created by necessity in how season 1 played out, while also having their own unique voices, they really kept the whole season feeling fresh. So that is wrapping up my super episode on Stranger Things 2. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you have a great day.